Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. That's a quote by James Baldwin. Amazing quote. Welcome to Quotation Corner. I'm Robin Hatcher, and Quotation Corner is where I unpack some favorite or famous quotations and talk about how they're relevant in the world today and or in the realm of communication. So today I was specifically looking for a quote about change, and I'll tell you why. I'm in the middle of reading a book called Immunity to Change, which is a great book. I highly recommend it. Now, Immunity to Change talks about the fact that we may have a goal to change, and then we put into place all these things that we are doing that are getting in the way of the change we want to see happen, which is very much related to what I talk about a lot, about the way that our brain processes things in order to help the human being in it survive. So we are always looking at whether something is going to help us survive or is going to threaten our very survival. And sometimes we do things that we think are helping us survive, but are counteracting a change that we would like to see happen. And so sometimes when we recognize those two things and we recognize those disconnects, then we can make the change that we need to make. Now, what this chapter of the book was talking about is that the authors often encounter people who create a goal for themselves. They identify what behaviors they are doing that are getting in the way of them achieving that goal. And then they start to look at the assumptions or the realities that they have in place that make it safe for them to continually doing those actions. Then they have to face the fact of, do they want to change that thought pattern, change that assumption in order to make our goal happen? Hope you're following me. And what happens sometimes is when people get to the point where they have to change their mindset, change their thought patterns in order to have that goal happen, suddenly they say, maybe that goal isn't that important. Maybe I'll work on another goal. Because that belief system, that assumption, those stories that we've told ourselves about why we need to take that action or do that behavior that we're doing, that is totally counterintuitive, counterproductive to the goal that we think we want to make, maybe that's too much of a threat to my life's ecosystem, so I'm not going to go through with it. I'll just keep things the way they are and I'll work on another goal. Okay. So a few moments later, I get an email from a friend of mine who is a white ally, and we were talking back and forth a little bit about some of the racism things and anti-racism things that we could do. And she was talking about interchanges that she's had with people on social media about the violence and how the violence is undercutting the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And I believe, and this is true, and she's been saying that she's had to go on social media and talk about not being distracted by the violence to her, probably her white friends. And it got me thinking, those two things, that chapter in the book, that email that I received, are connected. Because what's happening, and this is something that I was afraid was going to happen, is that all the people who say they want things to change, say they want to get on top of racism, say they want to start being really good citizens and abolish his racism and get behind Black Lives Matter, many of them are getting so distracted by the violence that they're going that way. The violence is so terrible, I have to focus on that, and therefore I can't make the changes I said I was going to make. Because that's what's happening. We're using that violence as a reason to say, my assumptions are right. We cannot have Black people be equal to me. That's been my assumption all along. That's what's been happening in the back of my subconscious mind. That's where some of my biases are coming from. And look, I'm going to focus on this activity, which proves my assumption correct. And I'm going to forget about the goal of making everybody equal, which doesn't go with my assumption, which is that we're not equal. When you're focusing on something that is negative, that is in keeping with your biases, that's going to keep us from changing. So how about we shift that focus? And no, I am not condoning the violence at all. It's horrible, and I totally wish it would stop. And it's not to be ignored. However, you want to think about it. Are you using that as an excuse to not face the change that you would like to make? And what other facts, what other assumptions might you be holding that is keeping you from facing the facts of how you want to change? Because as James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. So hopefully you begin to face some of your fears around change, some of your attitudes around change, some of your beliefs around change. I'm Robin Hatcher. Thank you for stopping by Quotation Corner.